Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi, LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking, well, of course, MLS All-Star, because it is MLS All-Star week, but we'll go through all the happenings for the MLS regular season over the last week. We'll be talking Lasso, of course, EPL, LaLiga, Serie A, Ligue 1, all sorts of stuff going on over in Europe. The top 10 leagues in the world, according to those of us here on the State of the Union. Let's see, what else? John Adams turning up the AC, the reasons for all of this incredible U.S. talent when it comes to the men's side, which is something new for us, water skiing, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Monday, August 23rd in the year 2021?
I am doing very, very well. Last week, I made my dramatic return to movie theaters for the first time since the pandemic started. I went twice to movie theaters.
To an actual movie theater. And how was that experience, my friend? I've forgotten what that is. What was it like? Was it eerie? Was it riding a bike, or how was it?
It was a little bit eerie, I must confess, but I enjoyed it. I went to see Stillwater, which is this Matt Damon film, which is causing some controversy. It's inspired by the Amanda Knox story. Do you remember that whole deal?
Sure.
That American student who was accused of murder in Italy? And so essentially, Matt Damon plays the father of an American girl who, while studying in Marseille, they moved it from Italy to France, while studying in Marseille, was arrested for murder under somewhat questionable circumstances and is in prison. And he goes over there and he's trying to free her. And I really enjoyed this film. I know Amanda Knox is not happy about it because I don't want to spoil it, but the movie concludes in such a way that might cast doubt on her acquittal. But
I don't care what Amanda Knox says. I don't care what Amanda Knox thinks of this at all. So I'm into it. So it was good. You give it two thumbs up.
I give it two thumbs up. I enjoyed it. So that was one. And then the other movie I went to see is a documentary, The Lost Leonardo, which is about this Leonardo da Vinci painting, the Salvator Mundi, which is the most expensive painting in the world. It was purchased by the Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, for $450 million a couple years ago. But there's still lots of questions about whether it is in fact a Leonardo da Vinci painting. So the documentary is about the whole process that went into the attribution of it as a Da Vinci painting, but others questioning it, and how the painting has changed hands the last few years, and how the prices kept going up. And it's this whole examination of the art world and how it's now played a part in politics, and how it was this sort of power move by Mohammed bin Salman in purchasing this painting. And I found it fascinating. I mean, I'm an art buff, so this was right up my alley, but I think even if you're not, you would really enjoy it. I highly recommend this as well.
Oh, that sounds good. Although I have seen plenty of documentaries that kind of follow the same path, whether it's art or wine or anything else. It's always is it really what it says to be, and all that, and everybody kind of agrees to look the other way, and everybody just kind of sells it and find somebody else to pass it on or to pawn it off on somebody else. All right, so those are a couple. What do you get when you go to the movies, Mosse? Do you have a go-to type of thing?
Big popcorn guy. I mean, I've gone to see movies I didn't even find that interesting just to eat movie theater popcorn. That's how much I love it.
What was the protocol there? Masks and all that kind of stuff?
Masks, yes.
Got it. All right. Well, now, was the Matt Damon one, is that because it was only available in the movie theater, or did you just say, I want to go to a movie theater, and you could have streamed it, on whatever?
I'm not sure if it's available elsewhere, but I did want to go to a movie theater, and
you had a hankering. Okay. All right. Good. Well, I'm glad that you were able to do that, and that you enjoyed it, and you were back in that type of environment. I did not go to a movie theater. Let's see. What did I watch this week? Oh, I went back and dipped back into something that's been out for a number of years, but I was surfing through some different stuff, and I saw the John Adams HBO series. I think it's 7 episodes, and you might have seen it. I know you're a history buff in the same way that I am, especially when it comes to America history, and Paul Giamatti portraying John Adams, and I'm not through it all, but I already really enjoy it, and I remember at the time it got a lot of accolades and attention. It just kind of passed me at the time, so I'm glad to be able to go back and watch that. And then okay, so the Lasso situation continues on. Okay, Ted Lasso. I am pleased to report in this week and this week alone that I feel like it turned back in a much more positive way. All right. I wasn't blown away or overwhelmed, but considering, as if you have listened to this pod over the last couple of months, you know that I was underwhelmed by this second season. I am still underwhelmed in totality by the second season of Ted Lasso. However, this last episode, which I think is number 5, if I'm correct, started to head in a better direction. So hopefully that bodes well for the rest of the season. I know they tease a lot. We were talking about this before we came on air. They tease a lot that it's going to get a little darker and a little more in depth going forward. Well, it hasn't quite had that turn yet, but I was happy with this. Although I will say, and for those that watched it will get this, Roy Kent, who is one of the main characters and one of the most popular characters, if you will, an ex-player, Roy Kent is a quitter, okay? And I'm not going to give too much away, but you should know that this is a ex-player, and this is an ex-player who retires and kind of, as a lot of ex-players do, is searching for that next thing and trying to replace something that was such a big part. And we've talked about this before on the pod, how difficult it is. And so he finds his way into, my world, our world, broadcasting. And he's very good at it, but I think he is disenchanted with it and ends up quitting. And I'll leave it at that. In doing so, while there's a part of me that looks at it as, quit, you let down the people, you should finish out your contract and finish out the quote unquote season. And the other part of it is it brings up what we often talk about here, in that it's very easy from the couch. It's very easy from the outside to look at what we do. And look, I'm not saying that this is digging ditches. We have a wonderful job, and we are more privileged and lucky than anybody else out there, and certainly 99.999% of the world out there. But there's a whole lot more that goes into it than what you see when you're on the outside, especially if you're doing it well. And so it was interesting to see here this phenomenon play out that we have seen, Mosse, so many times, where ex-players get these opportunities and get opportunities that others wouldn't, and doors open up, and they stroll in and they test the waters, and then they get a healthy dose of the reality, either the work that's entailed, or it just doesn't float their boat in a certain way. And I've said time and time again, I don't want to be surrounded by people that aren't junkies for what we do. And it was very, very obvious in this episode that this was not for him. So he quit and he went on. So while he is a quitter, I'm actually happy because it opens up a spot for somebody who actually can appreciate and do that job and wants to do that job. And we have so many people in our industry, Mosse, that, as you know, are just passing through and using it as a way station until something better comes along. And I don't have time for that. All right. I want to be surrounded by people, as I said, that are junkies, that are as jacked up and excited about doing this as I am. And so that's my little rant on Roy Kent. Still a wonderful character if you are watching the show. All right, Mosse, enough about that. You got any comments before we go?
No, my only comment about season 2 of Ted Lasso, and full disclosure, I'm not as big a fan of that show as everybody else is, but I find it watchable. There's been startlingly little soccer this season. There's an occasional reference to the team not doing well, but we haven't really zeroed in on any one game yet. I have no idea where they are in the table or what's going on from a soccer perspective with the team this season. So hopefully in the back end of the season, now that Roy Kent, I guess, is coming back as a coach, we'll get some sense of a little bit more. I know the show is not, it's more about the personalities in their lives, but hopefully they sprinkle in a little bit more of a sense of what the team is doing this season.
They probably thought, listen, we got so many people coming into this tent. We need to really lean into the stuff that's not soccer, because there's plenty of people that are watching. I mean, was it Reba McEntire was tweeting about it and stuff like that. Well, maybe she's a big fan. I don't know. Maybe she's a big soccer fan. But to your point, yes, I think they have gone away from that. But I think that is strategic in the way that they are doing. And I happen to not mind that, because it was never, for me, it was never really about soccer anyway. And so, and oftentimes when they did actually do the soccer part, it was not as authentic, shall we say, as other sports when they are done. So anyway, all right, we're not going to take a quick break. We're going to jump right into this. But thank you for, I know people out there sometimes scream and yell when we come on and we talk about our viewing habits and stuff like that. So that's for all of you. And for the people that like it, you're welcome. All right. Ready to light this candle, Mosse?
Let's do it.
All right. We got all sorts of stuff to talk about here off the top when it comes to this past week. We're going to start with Major League Soccer and all sorts of action that happened. Should we start with Seattle? Right, they're insufferable over there. So let's start off with my friends up in Seattle, who by the way, listen, they are insufferable, but I love them. I love their passion for their team. I love the consistency that they give us, not just in terms of the success on the field, but the consistency and the sheer size that they give us in terms of their love and their passion for the game, and through that and through their team. And their team is wonderful. And it's easier to love a team that wins and wins consistently. So we had a rematch of last year's MLS Cup. For those who remember, in Columbus, the Columbus Crew crushed Seattle 3-0 and won an MLS Cup. So this is a rematch back in Columbus, but not in historic Columbus Stadium. Actually, in their new stadium right there, which is I don't know. I think it's just gorgeous, and that's from the outside. I can't wait to get there and see what it looks like. However, it has not been the 12th man or the 13th man, if you count the fans as the 12th man, that they wanted it to be. And this is a MLS Cup champion in the season after they won, that looks nothing like a champion in the way that they are playing. Not only did they lose, but they lost in an incredibly heartbreaking way, as Seattle scored a couple goals in like 6 minutes. Columbus gets their goal. You think finally Bradley Wright Phillips scores his goal. You think they're finally going to get a win, a much needed win, and keep them from going losing 6 in a row. And no, Seattle does what Seattle does. They never give up. They never change. And Will Bruin ends up getting the 2-1 victory. And it is a mess right now for Caleb Porter and the Columbus Crew in what they are in 2021. And, Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? And right now, they haven't done much for their fans or for that stadium. And you could see, even before this game happened, when we talked to Caleb Porter, you could see and you could hear the frustration in his voice and the fact that he's tried everything, and it's not for lack of talent. They have plenty of talent. Yes, they have had injuries, and yes, there are certain things that he could point to and use as excuses, but they certainly should be more competitive, and especially at home. And they sent yet another, group and crowd, many who are still taste testing this new team because of this new stadium, home empty-handed without a win. And that's not a good look for Caleb Porter. It's not a good look for Columbus, and it's not a good look for that stadium. Mosse, what'd you think about this game?
Yeah, I've been completely wrong about Columbus this season. I thought they had a great chance to repeat as champions with the moves they made in the offseason, picking up Bolino and Bradley Wright Phillips. I felt like they were absolutely loaded. I even touted them as a candidate to win the CONCACAF Champions League, and instead it's been a disaster. It's the longest losing streak by a defending champion since the LA Galaxy lost 7 in a row in 2006. So that's how far you have to go back for that. And Seattle, yeah, this reminded me of that Western Conference final against Minnesota. On top of all the other qualities they do have this knack for pulling out games at the end, which serves them well. So, and we did a graphic on air showing how in these MLS Cup rematches, the MLS Cup loser from the year before tends to do very well. They have a great record in these rematches. So there is something to that revenge factor. And yeah, it was a game that it took a while to get going, but man, the last part of it was very exciting. Yep. And Seattle comes out on top.
So, the question, and we'll talk about some other results here, but the question that always comes up after a week like this as we assess what's gone on is who's on the hot seat, who's not on the hot seat. When it comes to Caleb Porter, look, as we mentioned, he is the defending MLS Cup champion, coach of the defending MLS Cup champions. I don't think that his seat is hot right now simply because of the season that he had last year, except, as we all know, 2020 was was a year unlike anything that most of us have ever seen, both on and off the field. And, we talked so much about the asterisk effect, right? About, this is such a different and unique type of situation in terms of what these teams are doing. How much credence do you give it? Because it is unlike anything that we have seen in the past. And so any kind of type of compare and contrast, either from a good coach or a good team, a good individual player, even a good goal, has to be viewed through the fact that it was done in a league, in a season like no other, both in terms of who you were playing, when you were playing, where you were playing, the circumstances in which you were playing with no fans, and the travel. All of that kind of stuff was unlike anything we've seen. Now, we haven't returned completely to normal, but we've turned more to normal than before this year. And so, that's part of the equation, but I don't think that is enough yet. And even with this 6-game slide from Caleb Porter, to make a change, I think he will be given until the end of the year to fix this. There will be an assessment. Was it just one of these years? And certainly in MLS, we have seen times where teams can go from worst to first, and we've seen where they've been, first and could possibly go to worst. But this was a game that they needed. I think, for their mentality. And if they were going to kick on, because we're at this point in the season right now, Mosse, where you're going to go one way or the other. Okay. And I think that it's not the nail in the coffin, but this was that jump start that they needed, and they didn't get it. And it was right in their hand. And when Bradley Wright Phillips scored the goal, and I get tweets throughout the game, people screaming and yelling at me, from both sides. So I know that I've done my job, because they're both, hating on me. And I got a tweet from, I think it's a guy, I don't know. And after Columbus scored, it's 1-0. You think they're going to finally get this, this win. He tweeted me and said, "I know how much you wanted Seattle to win, so take that," and screaming and yelling, stuff like that. And then obviously 6 minutes later, it's 2-1, and I went to respond to him, but he had deleted the tweet. So it was heartbreak for the Columbus Crew faithful, but just same old when it comes to Seattle in terms of their consistency. And Brian Schmetzer, just everything that he touches turns to gold. And he's much smarter than people realize. And his team just constantly responds. And it'll be interesting to see if they're able to maintain that through the playoffs, because we always talk about how just because you're good in the regular season doesn't mean that you're good in the playoffs. And you were right to do the numbers last week, and 7 of the 25 MLS Cup winners were actually Supporters Shield winners, and that's what, 28% or something like that. So it's not a good average when we talk about the Revolution or anybody else.
You're mentioning Seattle. I think that's going to be an issue for the Revolution, because they are running away with the Supporter Shield race.
I think
exactly. To win it, so.
Exactly. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, where else you want to go here in terms of some games here to touch on?
Atlanta have won 4 straight. And I know you got a question on Twitter about Rob Valentino, and should they consider just keeping him as the coach instead of going out and hiring Seattle assistant Gonzalo Pineda? And I thought you had a pretty good answer to this about interim coaches.
Yeah, you really have to beware the interim coach, because they can give you a real false sense of reality, and they can distort that reality very, very quickly. And look, I'm not saying that Rob Valentino hasn't done a great job, but they are put in a very, very different dynamic. They are put in a situation where they got absolutely nothing to lose. And that is not the day in, day out type of dynamic and situation and circumstance that most coaches are in. Because, for Rob, if they do well, he looks great. All right. If they do poorly, they were already poor. And so that's not a type of situation in which you should be judging. And they know who Rob Valentino is. They didn't need this stretch to determine how good or bad he was as a coach. He has done this before. So when an assistant coach, or whoever it ends up being, is in an interim capacity, you just got to be really, really careful, because they have seen for most part, they have seen what has happened behind the scenes, and they can very, very quickly and easily tweak and fix some of those things and basically just do different things. But that is finite. That does not last. Players respond very, very quickly when the locker room situation, the training situation, the messaging is changed very quickly to something different. And the assistant coach, as we all know, who is a conduit, and usually an assistant coach on a team always has his or her finger on the pulse of what is going on. They have that advantage of being able to come in and do that. So this is not a question of whether Rob Valentino should be the head coach. Okay. I think this is much more of a question of whether Gonzalo Pineda, who has been named the head coach, is the right person for the job. And we are not going to know that until we actually see it. Now, Rob Valentino might have used this situation to become very, very attractive to other teams when the offseason comes to say, hey, look, this is my body of work. But I think they would be wary too of all of his success coming within an interim type of coach scenario.
Interesting. Both Seattle and Atlanta at the transfer deadline went after one Brazilian and then ended up signing a different one. And in Seattle's case, the first player they went after, Wesley from Palmeiras, is a kid who I love. I think he's one of the best young players in Brazil. That would have been a home run signing. They weren't able to get him. Instead, they signed this guy, Léo Chu from Grêmio, who I don't think is as good. I don't think will make a big impact. I might be wrong on that, but we'll see. In the case of Atlanta, though, they actually made out better. The player they were initially first going to sign, it was a kid named Ferreira from Grêmio, who's talented, but a bit hot and cold. I don't love him. And this deal was done. I mean, he was on his way to Atlanta, and then it was almost like a DeAndre Jordan, Dallas Maverick situation, a U-turn at the last second. And so they ended up signing instead Luis Araújo from Lille, who I think is a better player than Ferreira. And he's stepped right in and first couple of games shown a lot of flashes and given him a real spark. So he's going to end up being a really nice signing. And that front four now with Araújo, Moreno, Barco, who's playing very well, and Joseph Martinez, who's starting to look like Joseph Martinez again. That is a very saucy front four there. So Pineda's walking into a nice situation.
Yeah, so Atlanta is at 27 points. They're tied with DC, but DC is just above them and just above the line when it comes to the playoffs. But absolutely, I think you should be looking at Atlanta with the positive vibes and nature that are now kind of enveloping this team going forward, and with players getting, back from injury, players playing better, and with a new coach coming in. You could certainly look to them as someone to make a run. You mentioned New England. They just continue to roll and run away when it comes to the Supporters Shield, and I don't think anybody is stopping them right now. And while they're not as insufferable as the Seattle folks up there, the New England Revolution certainly are feeling good about themselves, and as they should. This is not something that they have seen a lot of in recent times. So congratulations to Bruce Arena and the New England Revolution, who continue to kick ass and continue to go up this, to lead the Supporters Shield. And I think now, unless something drastic happens, they are the odds-on favorite for this Supporters Shield. Nashville's sitting in fourth place, and this is once again a still very young, still very relative to MLS inexperienced type of team. They're at 32 points. Congratulations to Nashville on what is already an improvement, and something that we want to see from expansion teams, where they are growing year to year, and it doesn't always happen. So far, so good. My NYCFC, they didn't play this past week. They were supposed to play the Red Bulls. So, I will reserve judgment until that ultimately happens. We can talk a little bit about that. Where do you want to go? Want to go to that quickly and hit that?
Yeah, it was disappointing. It was, I think, going to be our first NYCFC game this season, at least the first I've worked. So I was excited to watch this team. I was going to text Ian Joy with my thoughts during the game. And lo and behold, we get this 2-hour weather delay. And then what was interesting is it was the referee who made the call on this because the players had come back out. They were ready to play, but the referee didn't feel like the field conditions were playable. He tested it out and the ball wasn't moving. And so it was clearly the referee who made the call, which in reading afterwards, that's not how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to come from the league office, the commissioner. So there's a little bit of controversy, but I think ultimately it was the right decision. I mean, that would have been a ridiculous game.
While the ruling ultimately comes from the commissioner and the office, the laws of the game clearly state that it is the referee's discretion relative to the player's safety. So it doesn't matter what your league and or your bosses say, you ultimately, because you are given that responsibility, you have the right to do exactly what happened there. The interesting thing is, Kobe Jones was ready to call that game. We were in the studios, and we were all there, on site. We are in the studio, ready to do our pregame and do all that kind of stuff. And Kobe was waiting in the wings, ready to call it with JP Della Camera. And when it got canceled, I saw Kobe in the green room after, and he said, not for nothing, but we would have played that game. So we grumpy old manned it, and so the rolling of the ball, it's not going to roll because there's a lot of water on the field, but that never stopped teams before from actually playing. So it could have been played. It would have been ugly. And I remember distinctively, I remember coaches explaining before we went out in a game like that, how, what we trained on is out the window right now. You literally at times have to pick the ball up and actually play stuff in the air. And so it's a dramatic adjustment of tactics, if you will, individually, how you're playing and how you're going to play as a team to suit the circumstances out there. But I played plenty of games like that where the ball wouldn't go and you're sliding all over the place. And there's this, what to your point about the referee, there seems to be this concept that in a game like that with lots of water, you're more prone to injury. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, people are sliding all the time and doing different things, whether there's water on the field or not. So I don't quite know, but I'm sure somebody smarter will tell me exactly why you're much more liable to have injuries occur in a field that is wet like that than a non-field that's wet like that. But that's usually the thinking when when the referee makes a decision in the way that he did. So we didn't get to see the NYCFC team that, for my money, is the best team in the league.
Well, that game will be rescheduled, no doubt, to some date where you or I had a vacation planned.
Of course. All right, so we didn't get to see that, but we did get to see LAFC. And, we're going to talk a whole lot more about the MLS All-Star game here in Los Angeles, being played at Bank of California Stadium, home of LAFC. LAFC loses to the Vancouver Whitecaps, and it is not a good year for Bob Bradley and this LAFC team. And in the same way that you saw the frustration in Caleb Porter talking about why, or an inability to know why his team is not functioning, I think you're seeing the same thing with Bob Bradley. And you watch these interviews after the game, and he just looks like he's trying to think of what haven't I done. And these are legendary types of coaches that are incredibly smart, and that they've thrown everything at the wall and they've tried every trick in the book, and it's just not happening. Now, Bob Bradley's an interesting situation with LAFC with his contract coming up. I could certainly see them moving on from him after this year and this poor year so far, if this were to continue and they were to peter out and, let's say, not make the playoffs, where they're at 9th place right now. Having said that, Bob Bradley's footprint and stamp on LAFC is going nowhere, whether he is there or not. This team was formed around the identity that Bob Bradley has cultivated and inhabits on a continual basis. And I think that identity will be part of LAFC going forward, regardless of Bob Bradley's part of this team or not. He is a legend. I think he will be given certainly till the end of this year to try to fix it, but it does not look good right now for Bob Bradley and LAFC in the way that they are playing. They are a far cry from the dominating force that we have associated them as in the past. What else, Mosse?
And then the Galaxy lost as well to San Jose. Jose are unbeaten in 10, by the way. They've only won 3 of those 10, but nevertheless, Matias Almeida, there is a method to his madness there.
Well, hold on. Is there a method to his madness? Because when I watch this San Jose team play now, okay, I see a marked change in the way that they are actually playing. dare I say, there is a pragmatism that has crept into Matias Almeida. And that, to me, for him in particular, maybe not to other coaches, but for what he has promised, that signals to me, and I'm going to use the word, that's a betrayal. That is a betrayal, okay? Because when it really came down to it, it wasn't about principle. It wasn't about playing the way he wants to play. Now, some will say that he has evolved and changed his thinking and just, came to the realization that no matter what I want to do, all right, I am just banging my head into the wall, and I don't want to do that anymore. And he should be commended for that. No, but that's not what was promised. That's not what he has given us. That's not why, even when they weren't good, they were still interesting to watch. It was because of the way that they played, the unique aspect of the way that they played. So I'm happy for the San Jose folks that this team is more competitive, and that this team is getting the results right now, and this team is on a streak, and this team finds itself in the playoff zone right now at 7th in the Western Conference right now. But should it matter how it's being done, Mosse, I guess? And this is a much bigger picture, romantic type of question when it comes to the game.
So I said there's a method to his madness. The method is being less maddening.
Exactly. I don't think he cares ultimately, and probably the San Jose Earthquakes folks don't care. But from the outside, it should be. We should point out that this is how it is ultimately happening, and so that it took this long for him to figure that out. That in and of itself says a lot about him as a coach. But in the same way that I say, Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? Well, he's done some great things lately when it comes to San Jose in terms of the results out there. Let's see here. So we also come to find out, and we're going to talk more about the All-Star game here in a second, but Carlos Vela got hurt in this last loss for LAFC. And we come to find out this morning, as we're going on the air here on Monday, August 23rd, that he will not be participating in the All-Star game this week because of the injury. So, and this is coming on, El Tráfico's on this coming this weekend. So who knows if he'll be okay by the weekend, if he's just going to sit out the All-Star game in order to be ready for the weekend. But I think there's some sort of rule that you do have to get on the field if you are going to play that next game. Is that true, Mosse?
That sounds right. I'll have to double check that.
Okay, well, we'll see if this injury...
they would really enforce that and keep him out of El Tráfico.
Listen, man. No, I mean, MLS is nothing if not flexible. Okay, nothing if not so. And look, you got to really, really work hard to have MLS come down on you when it comes to the rules. If it is something for the good of a moment, of a team or of the league. I mean, you need only look at Inter Miami. I mean, they had to really, really work hard, and not only really, really work hard, but shoot themselves in the foot. And when I say shoot themselves in the foot, I mean snitch on each other when it comes to the ownership group there. I mean, it's amazing, the story with Inter Miami, but they would have allowed them to continue to do what they were doing if not for the inner squabblings of current ownership and the snitching on each other.
And they, by the way, are playing very well. 3-1 win over Toronto. Rodolfo Pizarro on fire, scored 2 goals. They've won 3 of their last 4. So I buried Phil Neville a couple weeks ago on the podcast, but he has turned things around. Credit to him.
He has. And you mentioned Pizarro, actually the first player in Inter Miami history ever to be named to the All-Star game, as he is the replacement for Carlos Vela. We just find out that about him going on air. So they still find themselves right now, let's see here, in 11th place with 22 points, which puts them 5 points out of the playoff zone. But certainly it is doable. And given all the craziness and the cheating and just the futility of this team, that they are even in that position right now, I guess can be looked at as a positive, given the amount of money that they spent and the expectations that they had. The bar, unfortunately, has been set very, very low when it comes to Miami. Let's see. Anything else, Mosse?
Well, why don't we transition to the All-Star game, since you already started talking about it?
Oh, hold on. Portland right now also is reeling. Somebody had asked me on Twitter about Giovanni Savarese and how hot his seat is. I think his seat is hot. Somebody asked me, well, you should, Gavin Wilkinson, the GM up there, should be fired. And as I said to this person, I said, listen, coaches get fired. Okay. GMs, they really don't get fired. And if they do, they will have done something really, really bad. They will have really screwed up in order to get fired. And believe me, I know exactly what I am talking about when it comes to something like that. Tim Lewicki, who used to be the head of AEG, and then was the head in Toronto for all their properties over there. He once told me, he said, because there was this talk about, do you want to coach or do you want to be in front office? He said, listen, coaches get fired, right? GMs don't get fired unless they really, really screw up. Now, a few years later, he ended up firing me. So, don't say that I never took a challenge. All right, so that's a good little wrap up of what's going on with MLS. And now everybody just kind of takes a breather and we shift our focus to the MLS All-Star Week, because there's all sorts of stuff going on. When I finish recording here, I'm heading down to Bank of California Stadium to do some press. And then on Tuesday, we have the MLS Skills Challenge, which is back, and I can't wait to do that. And then obviously the MLS All-Star Game featuring MLS All-Stars versus Liga MX All-Stars, which happens on Wednesday. And we are privileged, and it is absolutely our pleasure to broadcast that. Both of those things, the Skills Challenge on Tuesday is on FS1, and the MLS All-Star Game is also on FS1 on Wednesday. All right, where do you want to start here when it comes to the MLS All-Star shenanigans?
Well, full disclosure, there are quite a few players dropping out on both sides, so the rosters are in a bit of flux. But there's enough talent in both leagues that I still think they're going to both put out strong teams, and it's going to be a fun game. On the MLS side, as far as I know, Lucas Ryan's going to play, Emmanuel Reynoso, Raul Ruidiaz, James Sands, Miles Robinson, Atuesta, Matt Turner in goal. So there's more than enough there to put out a very strong team. On the Liga MX side, you've got Funes Mori.
Hold on. How do you fail to mention the captain, Christian Roldan? I mean,
Christian Roldan, Alex Roldan. That's a great story.
The Roldans are there too. I mean, there's a
first set of brothers to be all-stars in the same year. On the Liga MX side, we've got Rogelio Funes Mori, Orbelin Pineda, reviving their partnership from the Gold Cup, Luis Romo in the midfield, Guillermo Ochoa in goal. So I think plenty of talent on both sides. Should be a fun game. And I will say, I love this idea. I know we've gone through different iterations of this game. It started out in East-West, and then there was one that you scored in 98. There was MLS USA versus MLS World. There was one year where they played the U.S. national team. Then there was all these years where they've played different European clubs, everybody from Manchester United. Chicharito actually scored for Manchester United. That was his first game for United in 2010 after signing with them. Bayern Munich, there was that fun, Pep not wanting to shake Caleb Porter's hand at the end of the game. Juventus, Tottenham, Atletico Madrid. I always found those European club games hit or miss. I mean, there were some years where it was fun. Others were, you're catching a European club in preseason form, so they didn't always take it all that seriously. But to me, they've landed on something here that I love. The MLS Liga MX thing is red hot right now, and why not capitalize on it? So I actually think this MLS All-Stars versus Liga MX All-Stars is a great idea.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think that it ticks all the different boxes, whether you're looking at it from a partnership or a business standpoint, or when you're looking at it from a competitive standpoint. And, the advantage that individual teams, even some of the great teams in the world, have in that situation is taken out of the equation. Now, I do think there's an advantage when it comes to Major League Soccer because for the most part, a lot of these players have done this MLS All-Star thing before. And so they understand that you got to come together very, very quickly. Your time together from training is non-existent for the most part. And so you have to have an understanding very quickly of who you're playing with. MLS, all-star games, that's what we do. That's what we do in America. That's certainly what we do when it comes to Major League Soccer. And so I think that there is a familiarity both with the players and with the concept of an MLS All-Star team. And I'm not saying that Liga MX players haven't ever played in an All-Star game, but this type of scenario I think is great. What is going to be interesting is, over the years, I've heard from folks that the concept of pride for your actual league is very unique to Major League Soccer. And relative to other, you hear EPL folks, they'll talk about their individual team, but they won't necessarily talk in the way that we talk about pride for our league, whether it's MLS, whether it's USL, whether it's NWSL, in the way that others do. We, in the past, when teams have been in tournaments, there has been a MLS for insert team, hashtag MLS for insert team. And so there is this current of pride that runs through representing your actual league. I will be interested to see how much of that manifests in a Liga MX all-star team. And yes, you're playing for yourself. Yes, you're playing for the team that you represent, but you're also playing for this league. And all of these players will have heard the rumblings of what is to come potentially when it comes to these two leagues. They will also have heard the rumblings when it comes to the gap that has widened. They will have seen what's happened this summer. All of those different things. I'll just be interested to see how much that plays in. Ultimately, an all-star game is a chance to celebrate. It's a chance to have fun. But in this type of scenario in particular, I think the competitive juices will get flowing. And I'm talking about the all-star game. We'll talk about the skills thing in a second here. But I think that this, to your point, just really works, at least from the outside, and at least before the game is actually played. I think that there will be a level of competition and honor and, I guess, pride, if you will, when it comes to both of these teams. And I think because the talent, I think, is so equal, I think that whoever kind of feels more attached and feels more responsibility to represent the league in this type of situation will come out on top. Mosse,
well,
go ahead.
One person who doesn't think the talent is equal is our producer, Luis Aguilar.
Mm-hmm.
This is how he framed it in the rundown. Is this an easy win for MLS versus Liga MX? Boy, Luis Aguilar giving Liga MX some bulletin board material.
Wow. I mean, you mentioned the talent that is on display. Is it game-changing talent? I mean, we've seen all of these players to a certain extent before. Either we've seen them, obviously, in Liga MX starring, but also we've seen them with their national teams. We know who they are. There's nobody on this list that scares me, but they'll probably look at the same way of, whoever our counterpart of the State of the Union is down in Mexico that is recording their podcast today. They're probably looking at the MLS All-Stars together and saying, does Tajon Buchanan really scare you that much? So, or whoever put in, or the Roldans are all-stars. So I mean, that's the fun of it, right? It's also an opportunity for Liga MX to kind of show its wares, and as always, it's an opportunity for Major League Soccer. And I think we talked about this last week. There are segments of the soccer community out there that are constantly looking for something to justify their hate or their criticism or their ignorance, I guess, their ignorance or their ignoring of. What's the difference between ignoring and ignorance? Is that no? Okay. Anyway, to justify all of that, and if Liga MX comes in and cleans house and beats this MLS All-Star game, that will play right into a conversation or an argument that is kind of evergreen out there for people saying, yeah, that's why MLS sucks. That's why Liga MX is so much better than MLS. But that's kind of why we are doing this.
You do have some players who have switched sides, have gone from Liga MX to MLS, like Rodolfo Pizarro, Lucas Alarayan, Raul Ruiz-Diaz, Gustavo Bo. So it's interesting for them to, in a way, sort of validate their choices. I think there's a lot of spice to this game. I'm looking forward to it.
Now let's shift over to the skills challenge, which is happening on Tuesday. Myself and Rob Stone and Stu Holden and Rodolfo, right?
Landeros, yeah.
Yep, Landeros is going to be with us on Tuesday night. I have we didn't have these back in the day, but I have worked on them from a TV perspective. I think that this can be wonderful. I think that a lot can go wrong from a technical perspective, but a lot of smart people have planned this out. I will give you let's give you an idea of what ultimately is going to happen when it comes to this All-Star game. So there are 5 different skills challenges. One is shooting, so shooting accuracy, if you will. One is a touch challenge, so your first touch and your ability to control balls and do all that kind of stuff. One is a cross and volley challenge, which is also always fun. You got people throwing bikes and side volleys and doing all that kind of stuff. One is an actual passing challenge, so it's over distance, it's in the air. Obviously, accuracy is important there. And then there's a more classic type of crossbar challenge, which is always fun and something that happens consistently when it comes to soccer teams in terms of the training. All of this is, like I said, going to be televised Tuesday, August 24th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on FS1. I'm really looking forward to this because it's fun. It's fun to see how the competition in a different and unique way manifests itself, and the competitive juices get flowing. And some of these players, and maybe some players that you don't even necessarily associate with whatever is being required in that, will show and will shine. And I think you get to see some personalities out there that normally in a traditional game setting you don't necessarily get to see. So I would definitely tune into that. You know, they already got like 18 or 20,000 tickets out to folks out there. Be a lot of kids. It'll be a really, really fun time and a really, really interesting time for that skills challenge, Mosse.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of in the NBA, they do the dunk contest and the 3-point shooting contest. D. Brown winning the 1991 dunk contest is one of my favorite childhood memories. For some reason, that's always stuck out in my mind. So yeah, if MLS, obviously they do the home run derby in baseball. I call it home run derby to sound more authentic, but I think if MLS can cultivate a similar thing here, it'd be great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this as well.
All right. So anyway, a lot of stuff going on when it comes to the All-Star Week this week, and we hope it all goes off without a hitch. We hope from an MLS perspective that the players and the team do well, but from a TV perspective, we want entertainment. We want goals to be scored. We want the stars to star, and we want, from a broadcast and technical perspective, to hopefully go off without too many problems. So definitely tune into that. Once again, the MLS All-Star game is Wednesday, August 25th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on FS1. And as I said the day before, on Tuesday, which is probably the day that you are listening to this, August 24th, it will be at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on FS1, the MLS Skills Challenge. Some great events to check out this week. All right, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we will get to our European Roundup. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, Mosse. European Roundup. We're going to go all over Europe because there was all sorts of stuff going on. Where do you want to start? Serie A or?
Yeah, Serie A kicked off this weekend. We can go there, and we can start with Juventus because it was an interesting weekend for that club. All summer long, there have been suggestions that Cristiano Ronaldo might be unsettled and looking to go somewhere else, but those rumors never really caught on. Everybody was so distracted by the Messi stuff. And when you got to the start of the season, he's been training with them. Allegri came out and said, no, he's staying. I'd kind of sort of put all that to bed and said, okay, there was nothing here. This was just silly season stuff. And Ronaldo's ready to go for another campaign with Juventus. And then lo and behold, the team sheet comes out for their opening Serie A match against Udinese, and he's on the bench. And the reports on Twitter from credible sources like Fabrizio Romano were that he asked not to play in the game because he wants to sort out his future, which you're wondering, what the heck does that mean? But then they do bring him on in the 60th minute. He scores this dramatic stoppage time winner, fantastic header. Rip takes his shirt off, gets a yellow card. He's all happy, of course, because VAR ruins everything. The goal gets called off for a millimetric offsides. And then the quotes after the game were from the Juventus side were a little vague. Well, no, it was a mutual decision for him not to start, and there's no offers for him. So where is he going to go? Everything's fine. So I don't know. I mean, there's a week left in the transfer window, and I have no idea what to make of this Ronaldo situation. So, I mean, I have thoughts on the game, but I'll let you go first on this.
All right, look, and once again, we are spitballing here. We don't know what is true and what isn't true. But if it is true that he asked out of the game, that's weak. That's weak sauce. Okay. Now, if it's a situation where the club is in the midst of actually selling you and you're protecting your asset, I get it. But in that moment, everybody kind of knows what's going on. But that's, that there is this disconnect is not good. It's not good. It's not a good look for him or for this team. That he not only got the goal called back, but he even got a yellow card for taking off his shirt. It would have been the game winner. It would have been, hey, this is this is how much you need me and how important I am. I got into it with somebody this morning who was asking about, why VAR again and all that kind of stuff. Again, like always, it's offside. Okay. If you want VAR, okay, then don't be angry when VAR actually works and actually gets the call right. And you can't be, all the different things we say. Can't be a little pregnant. Lines, go ahead. You're moving the line. You're just moving the line. Okay. It doesn't really change anything. So not a good day for Cristiano Ronaldo. But this doesn't change the fact, and where the real question is do you think he's going anywhere, Mosse?
I don't. Like I said, there's only a week left in the transfer window, and it seems like, I don't know, for Cristiano Ronaldo to switch teams, there would have had to been more legwork and something that's been built up over the course of the whole summer. I mean, it seems kind of crazy that something would surface now in the closing days of the window. And so I don't know. I think he has one more left in his contract, I believe, and I think he should just play it out and then perhaps seek a new team next summer.
Well, do you think that if he stays, he is playing with a champion Serie A Scudetto level type of team when it comes to Juventus? We know what Inter did last year, but we also know Inter kind of had to make some big changes and sell some players. So do you think he's right back on top if he stays with this Juventus team?
It's an interesting dynamic in Italy. I was going to say that because Inter won Serie A going away last season. Juventus had a disastrous season, barely made top four. And yet, because of the financial issues at Inter, because of Antonio Conte leaving, because of Lukaku and Hakimi leaving, and Allegri coming back to Juventus, there's this sense that last season was just a blip and normalcy will be restored this season, and Juventus are being looked on as clearly the favorites. So it's rare that a team like Inter wins the league and yet gets to come into the next campaign with a chip on their shoulder and feeling disrespected. But that's kind of the dynamic here. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Juventus, that as for what happened this weekend, they jumped out to a 2-0 lead over Udinese and then ended up settling for a 2-2 draw. The one big positive was Paulo Dybala looked great. He had a goal and an assist. And he actually got recalled to the Argentina team today for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. I'm a huge fan of his. I didn't understand the last couple of years why he fell out of favor there, but Allegri seems to have shut all that down and said, no, he's going to be a key player for us again. So to me, that's a major positive for them. I will say, I know there's always a lot of hand-wringing from U.S. fans about Christian Pulisic's playing time at Chelsea when they keep signing all these new players. Mm-hmm. I'd be a little concerned about McKennie this season. It seems like the currency he built up in the last campaign has sort of gone out the window. He has to start from scratch again with a new manager. Allegri has his guys. He's very set in his ways. They've signed Locatelli. They're still trying to get Pjanic. You have Bentancur there, Rabiot, Ramsey, farther up the field, Cuadrado, Bernardeschi, Kulusevski, Chiesa, Dybala, Ronaldo. I know McKennie brings something different to any of those players I just mentioned, but you start running out of spots there and you start wondering. I mean, I've been reading all offseason in the articles in the Gazzetta dello Sport speculating about all the different lineups that Allegri might play this season, and he wasn't mentioned in any one of them. So it seems like he's become a bit of an afterthought. Now, he didn't play this weekend because of suspension. There was a suspension from last season that carried over, so don't read anything into that. But even when he is available, it's, we keep doubting these U.S. players, and then they surprise us and end up playing more than we expected. But McKennie does have his work cut out for him this season.
He does. He is not a regular starter. And what's interesting also is you were talking about the speculation. We're seeing stories, and we have now for the last couple of weeks, that have involved Weston McKennie as a possible part of deals, trades and movements. So and I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but he is going to struggles, not necessarily world, but he's going to have to fight much more so than I think from a U.S. national team perspective we would want, because kind of want him starting, but maybe that fight is going to be good. And he's certainly, if and when he gets his minutes, they are going to be well-deserved and earned in this type of situation. But also, to your point, if he were to make a move and kind of see the writing on the wall, it would not be out of the realm of possibility to see something like that. All right. Anything else, Serie A, Mosse?
So just to mention Inter quickly. So they did come into the season feeling somewhat disrespected. They had an emphatic 4-0 win over Genoa, which had the feel of like, hey, we're still the champs. Don't forget about us. And Edin Dzeko got a goal. He's who they picked up essentially to replace Lukaku, and we'll see if he can form a similar partnership with Lautaro Martinez. They also signed this Dutch player, Denzel Dumfries, to replace Hakimi, and they picked up Çalhanoğlu, who's essentially the replacement for Eriksen, whose future is very unclear, obviously, after what happened this summer at the Euros. And the rest of the squad is essentially the team that won Serie A, and Simone Inzaghi is a good manager, so we'll see. It might be that we're all overstating how much Inter are going to take a step back and that they're still going to be right in the mix for another Serie A title. So that's going to be fascinating to watch. And then the only other game worth mentioning is Mourinho did pick up a win in his first Serie A match in charge of Roma. They beat Fiorentina 3-1. He's got Tammy Abraham leading the line, who he signed from Chelsea, and guys like Zaniolo and Mkhitaryan providing service there. So we'll see what Mourinho can do at Roma this season, but a pretty good start beating Fiorentina in the opening match.
You remember that you're a baseball guy. Remember the team in Florida that bought all the players and then went and won a World Series and then completely disbanded after that? Who was that?
Florida Marlins.
Florida Marlins.
1997, yeah.
Okay. Even I knew that because it was a big story about what was happening there and just this brief moment of greatness. Now, look, Inter is a storied club, but it is weird to have someone like Inter in this type of situation. And I know, look, everybody's experienced problems, either relative to the pandemic or stuff that they have done in the past that has come home to roost here. For them to be like a Florida Marlins situation where they get what they wanted and then they dismantle it within an off season. All right, well, we'll see. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they will find a way to compete. All right, Mosse, should we head over to England?
Yes. Chelsea 2-0 winners over Arsenal. Lukaku gets a goal on his debut. I don't know what else there is to say about Arsenal that we didn't already talk about last week. I mean, it's the startling thing is this used to be like one of the showcase games in the Premier League, and now it just had the feel of two clubs that are not even punching in the same weight class, and Chelsea just taking care of business, no problem, nice and tidy, 2-0. The big picture question I would ask in England is, with Chelsea getting Lukaku, if City don't get Harry Kane and we finish the transfer window with both those clubs as presently constituted, could you make a case that Chelsea now have the better overall squad and that they're in fact the favorites to win the Premier League over City and Liverpool, who I do throw into that mix? I'm high on Liverpool this season as well, but could you argue Chelsea have the better overall team considering they have a striker like Lukaku and City don't have any center forward?
I mean, the defending Champions League winners only got stronger and not just got stronger. I mean, added a game changer. And we talk so much about that position, that number 9 position, that striker, and how important it is, but how difficult it is to find them. And that's why they are worth so much. So I'm not even sure it's controversial to say that and to look at what Chelsea is or what potentially Chelsea can be and how much better Chelsea can be. And to your point, when it comes to Christian Pulisic, who sending our best wishes and knocking on wood that he is healthy. He did test positive for COVID, asymptomatic and vaccinated. So hopefully this is a quick type of thing, especially when we look at the World Cup qualification process coming up here. So he wasn't involved in that. But even if he was healthy and ready to go, the chances of him starting, it's not assured. And so he's going to have to fight through this. And, it's a good thing that he is at one and arguably the best team in the world, but it also poses a lot of challenges for him getting on the field.
And just to round off my City point, they already felt thin at center forward, even when people were counting Gabriel Jesus in that spot. And Jesus started this weekend. City beat Norwich 5-0. He started as a right winger, which is actually the position he's been playing for Brazil for the last couple of years. And he had a man of the match performance, set up 3 of the 5 goals. And Pep sort of intimated afterwards that that's kind of the direction they're moving in with him. So he's not even really going to be a center forward this season, it sounds like. So they have nobody, which I know that they've done well without playing without a center forward, and they can still score plenty of goals, different players chipping in. But so you'd like to have one on the roster, at least as an option for different types of situations. So it's going to be fascinating to see if they don't get Kane, will they sign somebody else then? Or is it Kane or nothing? And they're just going to go into the season without really an out and out center forward in the squad, which would be amazing. And the only thing I would say about Jesus is he does have to figure out a way to chip in some goals from that position. He's an interesting player because in this era of inverted wingers, he's a right-footed player that's actually more at ease playing on the right wing versus the left. And he likes taking on his fullback and beating him to the end line and cutting it back instead of cutting it to the middle. So he does give you something different when he plays there. You don't have to rely on the fullback bombing forward to give you width. So, but it would be nice if he could score some goals. I mentioned he's been playing on the right wing for Brazil the last couple of years. And as a result, he's gotten a lot more assists and become a real creative force, but the goals have completely dried up from that spot. And even this weekend, he was great. They had all these assists, but he didn't score. And so, it can't be that you're swapping out assists for goals completely. It'd be nice if playing on that right wing, cutting in from the middle, he could still score some goals. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that.
It's amazing that we've gotten to the point where a right-footed winger actually playing on the right side is something unique and different. And to your point, the off wing, the inverted wing, whatever you want to call the folks cutting into their preferred leg is now so de jure that when you have somebody, like if Kobe Jones came along today, another Kobe reference, second one of the pod, if he came along today, he would be this unicorn because he plays out wide. He's right-footed. He does his best work playing out wide, and he beats people to the end line and then crosses the ball back. I'd be interested to hear, because I think if you ask some of the great strikers in the world, Lewandowski's and these types, if they prefer to meet a ball that's coming from the end line crossed back with that preferred foot from whichever side, the left or the right, or somebody cutting in and hitting it across the grain so it's falling away. I would think it's much easier to meet that ball coming back. You can get more power on it, and I think you can judge it better. But it is, like you said, a lost art to a certain extent. All right, Mosse, Liga?
Or you want to go there or Spain next?
Okay, no, let's go to Spain. Excuse me, let's go to Spain. La Liga.
So Atletico Madrid, the champs, won again. They beat Elche 1-0. Angel Correa was off to a great start this season with the goal. 2 wins out of 2 for them. Both Real Madrid and Barcelona dropped points away from home. Barcelona was 1-1 away to Bilbao. Memphis Depay did score a great equalizer. He looks like he is going to have a terrific season. He's not fazed at all by having to fill Messi's shoes. And in fact, the Spanish media is really lamenting that him and Messi didn't get to play together because they feel like they would have formed a really spectacular combo. The Real Madrid game was absolutely wild, 3-3. Against Levante. Gareth Bale scored. And then Vinicius Jr. came off the bench and scored 2 great goals. And the interesting thing there is, Vinicius is now inarguably a more explosive, dynamic player than Eden Hazard. But the one thing that's been holding him back is his finishing. He's one of those, does everything else right except the end product type of players. If he can solve that this season and even become a bigger goal scoring threat than Hazard, then it really raises the question of how Hazard, you could possibly justify still starting Hazard. He was poor in this game, got subbed off early in the second half. So that bears watching, but crazy game. Real Madrid, Levante 3-3.
All right. But you're burying the lead here. Let's be honest. Okay. The great Mallorca sits in 4th place with the exact same amount of points as Barcelona and Real Madrid and Valencia for that matter. So Stu Holden's Mallorca just in rarefied air. And I know we're only 2 games in, so, stuff could certainly happen, but smoke them if you got them. If you're Mallorca right now, it's wonderful to pull up the standings if you're Stu Holden and look at where your Mallorca team is. All right. So getting back to here, have you seen anything? And as I said, very early days, but have you seen anything to make you think that it is anything else but an Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, Barcelona race? And within those 3, have you seen anything to make you think that last year was more of an anomaly and that Real Madrid and Barcelona will get good as the games progress and will ultimately catch and pass Atletico Madrid?
No, in fact, I would say for the title, it's really between Atletico and Real Madrid. I think it's a real stretch to think Barcelona are going to win the title. I've seen enough in the first couple of games from them to feel like they've got a solid chance at top 4, which it's amazing that that's even framed as a compliment to Barcelona. But, given we didn't know what to expect without Messi. But I think for the title, it's going to be between the 2 Madrid clubs. And no, I think Atletico are going to pick up right where they left off and are going to be right there. So it's going to be a great race between those 2 teams.
All right. So you're Real Madrid, even though, let me see, the goals for 7, goals against 4. They already have let in 4 goals. Okay, whatever. All right. Anything else, La Liga?
No, that's it.
All right, mon ami, let's go to Ligue 1, where there was stuff happening, I guess, on the field, but not necessarily soccer-wise. That was not good to see. Fans storming the field. The game was suspended, the Nice versus Marseille game. And if you haven't seen these pictures and this video, check it out, because it is nuts. It is wild. Players being pelted, and then some players picking up stuff and pelting back, which created a whole other problem. And then, fans coming on the field, complete mayhem. It wasn't prolonged in that it was a momentary type of situation. They came on, they did what they needed to do. The security came on, all hell broke loose, and then they went back in. But certainly not something that you want to see.
Well, you might recall a week ago we discussed the Malice in the Palace documentary. Yep. And then we have this incident that was essentially an homage to what happened in Detroit that night. And it sort of raises similar questions about how much blame players should get in these situations, because we all agree what happened here was in the second half of the game between Nice and Marseille. Nice fans, Dimitri Payet went to take a corner, is a Marseille player, and the Nice fans threw bottles at him, and then he picked up the bottles and threw them back at the fans, and that triggered this whole melee in which the Nice fans came onto the field and tried to attack the players. And so everybody agrees what the Nice fans did was disgraceful. But then there are two schools of thought regarding Payet. Some people say his reaction is justifiable, and others say, no, a player has to keep his head in that situation. You can't be throwing things at the fans because that's going to escalate things. So that's the big debate going on in France today. Where do you come down on that?
Is it justifiable? No. In the same way you don't go into the stands, it's not justifiable to throw stuff back at somebody. And that's only going to end one way, okay? First off, you're going to get in trouble, much more so that because now you're not looked at as much as being the victim, okay? And however, the result of people throwing stuff at you, okay, and we've seen games where it just continues on. This was a smaller type of situation. There was plenty of security, and especially in this day and age where we are, so sensitive in a good way to that type of stuff going on, you need to nip it in the bud. All right. You need to clear out that whole section. If something like that happens, and I know we'll say, well, video can point out this person and this person. You know what? One bad apple spoils the whole damn bunch, and that whole damn bunch should have been cleared out. And then that says to the person that was, in this case, assaulted, we got your back, and there are going to be repercussions, and immediate. Right then. But then you throw stuff back in, then it causes all sorts of problems. And then you were attacked, but you returned. And I'm not saying it's not, you don't have, it shouldn't be justification for somebody defending his or herself. I get all that, but you throw stuff back in. And when you do that, you can't be sure that it's hitting the person or persons that ultimately attacked you. So you got to really be careful of that. And it's only going to end one way. And so that's a problem. And you're taking a bad situation and you're making it that much worse. Now, if you have no confidence that the security is going to do anything, that's a problem, but it's a whole nother problem that needs to be solved.
It's actually the rare weekend where PSG wasn't the story in France because of this madness. Right. They won, they beat Brest, still no Messi or Neymar. Sounds like maybe the next game they play, those two will enter the fold. But no, the story in France is all about this craziness. Dare I say, Nice fans were not very nice. I had to. I'm sorry. This was also, by the way, the only game in the rundown where Luis Aguilar correctly listed the home team first. He did it wrong for every other game he mentioned in the rundown, but so he pulled it together at the end.
All right. Well, All right. Should we move over to Germany? Finish it up here?
Yep.
All right. Bundesliga. All sorts of stuff going on.
Well, first off, I said last week that this was my annual trying to talk myself into Dortmund being able to challenge Bayern. And sure enough, they then lost at home to Bayern in the Super Cup and lost to Freiburg this weekend. So they're already off the case, like 2 weeks into the campaign. And Bayern got a win over Cologne 3-2. But the big story for us, Jesse Marsch picks up his first Bundesliga win in charge of Leipzig. They beat Stuttgart, who are also managed by an American. So this was a nice little, match here for Americans with two different American coaches involved.
It was really, it was fun to see. The score and all that. That's all fine and well. But what this represented for American soccer and for American soccer coaches, Jesse Marsch versus Pellegrino Matarazzo. And it was not just good because a lot of us know a whole lot about Jesse Marsch, but I think it was also good to be reminded of Matarazzo and, where he's from, what he has done, and, the scores, whatever, but it's just, and I'm going to talk more about this later on in the pod, how far we've come. Still got plenty of ways to go and still got plenty of work to do. But that we are sitting here on August 23rd in the year 2021, and we are seeing two American players, ex-players, now coaches, coach and lead Bundesliga teams against each other. That is wild and crazy stuff, but awesome stuff. What else, Mosse?
That's it.
Okay. Let's see here. We should mention Brendan Aronson, right?
Yes. I forgot about that. Yes. So we're in the Champions League playoff round. This is the last round to get into the group stage. And last week, Salzburg claimed a 2-1 home win over Danish side Brøndby in the first leg of that tie. And Brendan Aronson did score a late winner. So now Salzburg have to go to Denmark and try to protect that 2-1 lead. But a nice moment for Brendan Aronson there.
Yep. I think he is growing as a person, growing as a player from this experience that he is getting. I'm not necessarily sure that he is facing anything that he hasn't faced before relative to the competition that he is facing on a continual basis. But this is also part of the plan is that this is a step in the process, and I'll be interested to see if he continues to make an impact, not just starting and scoring goals, but growing as a player, whether it's the reality or just the perception of him as a player, where that next step is, because there is a part of that plan that involves a next step.
Random digression here. Red Bull have extended their tentacles into Brazil. A couple years ago, they invested in this second division Brazilian club Bragantino, and they've done what Red Bull does. They've poured money into it, but in a smart way, buying a lot of young players and building up the squad. And Bragantino won the second division, got promoted to the top flight, and now they're in 5th place in the Brasileiro and in the semifinals of the Copa Sudamericana, which is the Europa League equivalent of South American football. And so you look at it with what Leipzig are doing, Salzburg, Red Bull, Bragantino. The New York Red Bulls are in danger of becoming the Fredo of this family here. They need to be careful, but because all the other Red Bull teams are thriving right now.
Oh my goodness. Oh goodness. The red-headed stepchild, if you will. All right. Well, we'll find out if the New York metropolitan area is red or blue going forward. Okay. That's enough from Europe. We're going to take another break here. When we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. All right. We're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. You send us those questions, comments, concerns out there to use that hashtag Ask Alexi. This week, we've taken them all from the interwebs out there, although we do have our hotline, as many of you know. This week we had a bunch of folks calling up and screaming and yelling about the New England Revolution, either that they love the revolution and I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm spot on in terms of the assessment of my revolution. So it was just kind of more of the same. So we're going to take some from the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Instagram types of things out there. By the way, if you do want to call, 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297 for our State of the Union hotline. Okay, first up, Mosse, who's up? Paul Jackson?
This is a question that Paul asked a while ago. We said we would get to it. We hadn't. He reminded us again on Twitter this week. And so, Paul, the moment has finally arrived. Paul Jackson asks, what are the top 10 best domestic leagues in the world? And Paul defines best by ability to attract international talent, interleague tournament performance, and brand recognition. And then follow-up question, how does MLS rank versus League MX?
Okay. All right. So he put his criteria down. As you're going through this exercise, go ahead, use your criteria, whatever it ends up being. I'm okay with his criteria, and ultimately this is subjective. So you want to make your own list, make your own list. All right. How about I start from this top, from number 1, and then if there is some sort of deviation between what we're talking about, let me know. Okay.
All right.
EPL number 1.
Yep.
Okay. I think it hits all of those criteria that we're talking about. And more so. I mean, I also look at the actual business of it. Yes.
Say the fascinating thing here is going to be, when do you start slotting in non-European leagues? I assume if your track record is any indication, it's going to be sooner than people on Twitter think you should, and that's going to get people riled up. But
yes.
Go on with your list.
Yes. All right. So 2 Bundesliga. And I might even at times, this is where the different criteria overlap or here or there. When you look at what the Bundesliga is specifically as a business, it is incredibly strong. It has incredible clarity. And, I know that they definitely have promotion relegation, but the parity and the understanding. Anyway, but I still would Bundesliga number 2. You go with that?
I would. I mean, I don't know. Let's go through your list first.
Okay.
And then we'll
then I have Serie A number 3. And that's only of late in what Serie A has been. And we know what Serie A once was, and they kind of killed that golden goose. But I think that they have done a good job of kind of returning to relevance. Still some business problems when it comes over there. But I mean, this ultimately was a question of, do I put La Liga there or do I put Serie A? And so I put Serie A at 3, and then I put La Liga at 4. Are you good with that?
I'll give mine afterwards.
Okay. Now this is where it gets interesting, Mosse. Okay. All right. Number 5. You got it. You wanted it, right? MLS. I'm sorry. Yes. MLS at number 5 after La Liga, which means Ligue 1 is number 6. Okay. Then we get to 7, the Eredivisie from Holland. Then we get to 8, which is Liga MX. Then we get to 9, which is it's the Brasileiro. I don't know was that what we're calling it? I don't know what the actual name is. That right?
Yep.
Okay. And then number 10 would be the Primeira Liga in Portugal. So those are my 10. So you don't have leagues like Austria or Denmark or the Scandinavian leagues out there, or Switzerland, or Argentina certainly would be some of theirs, certainly with the talent that they have. And the reason why that I put MLS so high, okay, is a lot because of, and who was his name? Paul Jackson asked on, brand recognition, the ability to track international talent. I also put in my criteria the ability for growth, the business of it. All of that type of stuff I put in there, and I can compare and contrast with others. Am I saying that MLS is as popular as Ligue 1 worldwide? Not necessarily. Okay. Am I saying that it's as popular as Liga MX, even in our own country here? So, certainly not. And the numbers bear it out. But when you look at it as a business in totality, in what they are doing, the things that they have done the last 25 years, the strength, the parity, the billionaires behind this, all of those different things, that's where it pushes it up for me. And yes, I know I'm biased. I know I am bringing my baggage to this. Okay. But you know what? You want to have your own list, then go ahead and make your own list and put MLS wherever the hell you want, or don't even put it on your top 10. I don't care. That's what I am doing when it comes to my top 10 list right there. To you, Paul Jackson. All right, Mosse, what else what do you have in your list here?
Well, there's a pretty recognized big 5 in Europe, which is the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and Liga. In pretty much in that order, although I would argue La Liga has been trending downward the last couple of years. Serie A has been trending upward. So I'm okay having a debate between La Liga and Serie A, which should be 2 and which should be 3. But I think those 5 double as the top 5 leagues in the world. And I should say, my list is a lot more steep than just the quality on the field. I gave less credence to all the stuff about marketing and brand recognition. Okay. Then, like I said, the interesting thing becomes, when do you start slotting in non-European leagues? To me, the four best non-European leagues in the world are the Brazilian League, the Argentinian League, Liga MX, and MLS. So how did those compare to those second-tier European leagues, which would be Portugal, the Eredivisie, and probably the Russian League, I would say, or leagues 6, 7, 8. So yeah, that 6 through 10 is tricky. I would probably
Eredivisie. Where do they come? Where does Holland come in?
They would be towards the end of my top 10.
Okay.
I would probably I think I would move the Brazilian League all the way up to 6.
Okay.
I would have Portugal maybe at 7.
Okay. That's fair.
And then I would say, let's say maybe the maybe the Argentinian League at 8,
okay,
and Liga MX 9, and then MLS and the Eredivisie are battling for 10, something like that. It's a tricky one, yeah. And now I will say this: MLS, out of all those leagues, is one that's might be in the most upward trajectory. Where if you look at it where it is today versus where it was 5 years ago, and where we think it might be 5 years from now, so I will say that there's definitely that to be said about MLS, but it also is an outlier in its structure relative to every other one. Well, Liga MX to a certain extent, but for the most part, relative to all of these other leagues that we are talking about. Obviously, it's a single entity. Obviously, there's no promotion relegation, but that manufactured parity that we talk about, I think, is very unique to the league relative to all of these other teams, and so that can shade it, and you can make an argument and separate it out and put it different places. I think that's where that's where I find the ease of putting it above or below different teams out there, or different leagues. I'm second guessing my Portuguese and Brazilian. Maybe I'd move Portuguese up to 6 and Brazil to 7, and have Portuguese 6, Brazil 7, Argentina 8, Liga MX 9, and then, like I said, Eredivisie and MLS battling for 10th.
Well, it's an interesting exercise. And look, everyone, like I said, has biases. And, you mentioned the Russian league, which is certainly not something that we follow, and not a lot of people follow around the world, although it has plenty of money and has a history. And there's certainly great players that oftentimes have come out of that. So, we didn't have, the J League or China or other or the A League down in Australia, or different things like that. And I think we will both readily admit that these are not things that we have a steady diet of, and so it might impact that list. But you know what? You're out there, make your own list. Let us know what you think. What is your top 10? Can
I use this question as a jumping off point to talk quickly about South American football for 1 second?
Sure, Mosse.
We don't talk much about the Copa Libertadores, but when we reach the business end of the competition, Alexi indulges me a little bit, and we are at the semifinal stage, and 3 of the 4 clubs are Brazilian. It's the first time under this present format, which people are tracing back to 1988, when the format more or less resembled what it is now, that one country has had 3 semifinalists. Flamengo, Atlético Mineiro, and Palmeiras were the defending champions. We're all in there. And then the one non-Brazilian club is Barcelona Guayaquil from Ecuador. They'll face Flamengo. And then the other semifinal will be all Brazilian, Atlético Mineiro against Palmeiras. And Flamengo are overwhelming favorites against Barcelona Guayaquil. So we're headed most likely for another all Brazilian final. And that's actually leading to some interesting discussions in South America, because, the Copa Libertadores can't match the UEFA Champions League in terms of quality. But until recently, one thing they took pride in was the fact that it was a lot more unpredictable. Folks in South America sort of bristled at this super club culture in Europe, and how you have the same teams with all the money winning every year. Well, the Libertadores wasn't like that. Well, it's kind of headed in that direction. First, CONMEBOL made some structural changes to the competition a few years ago that have really benefited Brazilian and Argentinian clubs, and they really started dominating 3 straight years, 2018, 19, and 20, all 4 semifinalists. It was 2 Brazilians and 2 Argentines in each of those years. And now there's even a little bit of a gap opening between Brazil and Argentina because of the financial edge that Brazilian clubs have. Now, some Argentinians are bristling at that. They think people are overreacting by pushing that narrative. Hey, Boca Juniors should have knocked out Atletico Mineiro in the round of 16 this season. They lost on penalties. They were the better team over both legs. They had a couple goals controversy disallowed by VAR. And it's not that long ago where we had a River Boca final. So everybody needs to cool their jets and talking about how this Brazilian domination. But others like Tim Vickery are starting to see a trend here in that Brazilian clubs have opened a massive financial advantage over the rest of South America. They have this almost Bayern Munich-like ability to poach rival countries for talent. In the Atletico Mineiro River Plate quarterfinal tie, Atletico won 4-0 on aggregate. 3 of the 4 goals were scored by Argentinian players, including the winner in the first leg was scored by a player they bought from River Plate, Nacho Fernandez. So people are starting to see a concerning trend here with South American football that bears watching, where it might go down the path of Europe that we keep talking about how it's too top heavy and predictable. And you have a few clubs that have all the money, the so-called super clubs, and might South American football be going down that path as well? I mean, you talked about the unique nature of MLS and the parity, and that's something in this country that people really value and try to preserve. And so South American football is sort of grappling with that question as well.
Well, the only way you poach players, well, not the only way, but for the majority of the time, the way you poach players is you offer them money, and you offer them more money than somebody else would. And unless you're bringing them to a place that's just incredible and gorgeous, and that's the value of doing it, the reality is if you have people that have more money and that are richer when it comes to ownership there, if they do it right, they are able to amass more talent, and they will be a destination, and they will be, to quote MLS Commissioner Don Garber, a league of choice. They choose more money. All right, Mosse, anything else?
Next question. At Jacob Emmerich 6, what is the culprit of all this U.S. men's national team talent in the pool? Seems like a mere decade ago we were hurting for talent and development. What, if anything, has changed?
Well, as I think we've talked about before, the seeds to this were planted a long time ago. And ironically, they were planted even in a time when we were at our worst, in that, not qualifying for the 2018 Men's World Cup was the biggest failure in U.S. soccer history and the lowest point in U.S. soccer history. And yet those seeds had been planted to grow what we are now seeing. And we are, reaping the rewards of a lot of hard work and a lot of men and women over the years. The infrastructure has increased. I'm going to talk more in my one for the road about how far we have come. And I am older. I don't consider myself old, but I am certainly older, and I have seen this progression. And sometimes we lose perspective in terms of how far we have come. But when a kid wakes up today in 2021 US, what they are afforded and the opportunities that they are afforded from a soccer perspective are night and day relative to what I did. And so I think that, you look at the way that MLS in particular went all in on development and mandated their teams to have youth teams and to have development academies, and the way that very, very quickly they got those up and running, and some of them become very, very robust. The free aspect of it when it comes to the opportunities, and oftentimes people will talk about the pay-to-play type of situation. So the fact that there are elite opportunities that are free to the best players out there, that's something that's new. The times, right? The pandemic, what we have lived through has changed the business, and people not just kicking the tires, but recognizing that there is a talent and a wealth of talent, which I think people have at least respected over the years. But when the times and the financial situation and the realities of what business are make it even more worthwhile to mine the American market, we're going to see opportunities, and we're going to see advantages that weren't there in the past. So that's better coaching, as generations now of former players and coaches that have lived through the American process and have ideas of their own now come to fruition. That has helped, certainly. As I said, more opportunities, more playing opportunities, the scouting network that exists now all of those different things are, and I'll leave you with this: the failure that I talked about in 2017 of not qualifying for the 2018 World Cup. There was a real self-examination process that happened, and a step backwards that almost forced us to look at what we have done or hadn't done in certain cases, and to lean into the good stuff that we had done, to maybe get rid of some of the stuff that we thought that we think wasn't good, that has enabled us to maybe in a certain way take 2 steps forward. So, a lot of it is planned. A lot of it is the soccer gods and serendipity and that kind of stuff just coming together. But I think ultimately it comes down to, sometimes in the moment, it's difficult to see how plans are going to come to fruition, especially when they are long-term types of situations. And some of them, the DA Academy, for example, which isn't even around, still played a part and gave opportunities. And so it will morph and evolve as we go forward. And some things will last, some things won't last. But even those that don't last can have positive effects. And we can look back when we're doing that postmortem and say, what went well, what didn't go well. There may be some stuff out there, either individuals or projects or things that we spent lots of money and time on, that even though they're not here anymore, like a DA type of situation, or the way the United States Soccer Federation has looked at their development tree, if you will, that played a part. So it's a lot of different things, but ultimately it's a lot of work, a lot of it that goes unseen, and then spending money wisely. All right, what else, Mosse?
Last question, and boy, Luis Aguilar, this is a heat check on his part, because it's only his 3rd ever podcast, and he's already feeling comfortable throwing in silly joke questions. At Tweeve00 asks, does turning up the AC make it hotter or cooler in the house?
All right, so he asked me this, I don't know if it's a he, but Tweeve00 asked this, and it got me thinking. And my answer was initially and immediately, and it hasn't changed having thought about it more since then, is that we associate turning something up with increasing, right? Turn up the volume, right? It's an increase. It's when we talk about air conditioning, it's always in the context of cooling. So when I look and put those two together, when you are turning up the air conditioning, I look at it as you are increasing cool. Now, I know that this is, one of these existential type of questions that can go a bunch of different ways, but that's how I look at it here. I look at it is that when you are turning up the AC in and of itself is always relative to cooling something. And so when you are turning it up, you are increasing it, you are making it cooler, as opposed to those that say that you are really just turning down from a temperature perspective the AC. I don't know, Mosse, do you have something to say on this?
I do not.
He does not. Why am I not surprised? All right. Well, anyway, keep your questions coming. When it comes to AskAlexi, use that hashtag out there. As I mentioned before, you can either do it on Twitter, you can do it on Instagram, you can do it on Facebook, and you can also call us. And that, the calling part and the hotline that we have has actually been really, really fun. And we've gotten some good questions over the last, half year that we have been doing it. 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. And you can certainly call and just scream and yell at me. I mean, we listen to them all. Whether we use them or not is a different story, but we listen to them all. So if you feel that you need that outlet to tell me either how wrong I am or how horrible I am, or Mosse or anybody for that matter, feel free to use that. 657-549-2297. All right, that's the end of AskAlexi. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I will have my one for the road. All right, we're back, and it's the end of the pod. We've gone a little long today, but hopefully it was worth it. You be the judge, as you always are. My one for the road today, for those that can't see me, for those that can, you will see that I am wearing a Detroit Express shirt. For those that can't, I am wearing this T-shirt. It's orange. It is the old logo of the Detroit Express, which was a NASL team back in the late 70s in Detroit. And when I say Detroit, I mean Pontiac, in the Pontiac Silverdome. And so it was my, I guess for lack of a better phrase, my home team when it came to a professional team. I did not grow up watching professional soccer, unfortunately. I did not grow up going and seeing professional soccer or being able to see it on television. This was my first exposure to a professional team, a team that was playing in the NASL in Detroit, in the Pontiac Silverdome. And I vividly remember when Trevor Francis, a England legend, signed with Detroit, wore his white shoes on the AstroTurf of the Pontiac Silverdome. And I remember going out and watching the Detroit Express and seeing players like Trevor Francis and Clyde the Glide Watson and Brian Tinian and Gus Moffitt, and the list goes on and on and on. The reality is, though, what I was looking at, I had very little connection to, in that I did not see myself in any of these players. They were professionals, so they're always going to be larger than life. But that connection, that ability to see someone that I had a shared type of upbringing and existence with was not there, as opposed to today, when, as I mentioned in the previous segment, a young boy or girl can get up in this American soccer world in which we live in 2020 and is able to watch their professional team on television, is able to go to their professional game in, by the way, soccer specific stadiums, and is able to go and watch someone like, I don't know, Chris Wondolowski, who just got his 400th appearance in Major League Soccer, and is able to relate to where that person came from. And, in this day when we see, I don't know, Tanner Tessman, who got his first minutes for Venezia in Serie A, or Gianluca Busio, and these young players who are being given these pathways and these opportunities that were, as I said, non-existent when I was growing up. And in the span of 25 years, so much has changed. As I say, it makes me incredibly happy and incredibly proud, and warms my heart that we are living in a moment where these types of things are happening. We do have an incredible history when it comes to our American soccer, both on and off the field. Some of it is lost. Some of it is hidden. Much of it has come to light. It is very different than the histories in many other countries and cultures. It is worth looking into, but it's also worth looking at how far we have come. And it makes me so happy, as I said, to be able to get up on Monday, August 23rd in 2021, and know that, for example, this week, I will be able to watch soccer. I will be able to go to soccer games. I will be able to see an MLS All-Star game. I'll be able to watch NWSL. I'll be able to see that Angel City has just signed their first coach and just signed their first player and will be coming online, and all of these wonderful things that are happening. And when someone like myself growing up, who is a soccer player, who has aspirations and dreams that are relative to this new world in which you're growing up, when they go and watch, they can watch people and have a direct contact and have a direct link to what is going on the field. And so it's not me watching Trevor Francis run around, as great as he was, and as much as I looked at him as, wow, there was no connection. And there is a constant connection now when young boys and girls wake up each and every day and are able to look at what is going on with their soccer. Anyway, I thought about that when I put this shirt on, and what it had meant to me in the moment, and how that particular moment that I went through, and now as a 51-year-old, thinking about that moment, how different that moment would be if I went through it today in present day, with what soccer has become in the United States. And it's all good. It's all wonderful that it is such a different moment. for those players that are going through it nowadays. All right, Mosse, we come to the end of another show. Anything before we say goodbye?
That is it.
All right. You are appreciated as always, my friend, as are you for listening and downloading and reviewing and rating and participating when it comes to AskAlexi or our hotline or anything else. We really do appreciate and thank you for all of the interaction that we have with this State of the Union podcast. We'll be back again next week on the State of the Union. And until then, and as always, size the day. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.